Welcome to DTech Apps presentation on our solutions and applications built on top of the ServiceNow platform, App Engine. So here at Discover Technologies, our group is called DTech Apps. That group is focused on delivering enterprise applications built upon the ServiceNow platform, but also providing those applications not requiring a ServiceNow investment in the App Engine. If you want to if you're excited about the application and don't own ServiceNow, there's a different avenue that we can go down. So for those of you that have built workflows before in enterprise applications, here at Discover, we've got over 20 plus years in designing and implementing workflows. And through that process, there's some things we've learned. And those things is, building workflows are highly beneficial. You need them inside of enterprises. You need to have those if-then statements that happen through an organization that allows you to build out an application that you want to deliver to your teammates and employees. But what we found is sort of 8 things. They're time consuming to set up. They can take sometimes up to over a year to get something running through UAT and into production and trained. A lot of times we over engineer it, which makes it a rather complicated process, which then breeds into the world of limited flexibility. They don't sort of live and breathe in a dynamic way. You've got to follow the process 1 through 10, and there's no diverting it other than busting out of that workflow and going into either instant messaging or email, which then you lose the data. You've got change management challenges, you got maintenance requirements, you got data silos, all those things that I'm sure everyone who's on this call has experienced. So in 2017, ServiceNow came to us and said, hey, listen, we're the workflow company, but we've got a few organizations that want to have dynamic enterprise processes built inside their organizations, and they don't want them to be workflow. They've already got their workflow stuff tagged, but they do have an enterprise need for a system built on our platform that could be dynamic. It's not going to replace email, but it needs to be as easy as email to deploy and to be trained. It can't be a heavy footprint. So we identified our first customer, started the development, and then we launched our product of task management internal to one of our customers. Through that process, the need was we don't want to store information inside ServiceNow. Our files and documents need to live somewhere else, and we'd like that to be SharePoint. So we created a second product, which is DocIntegrator. DocIntegrator is our SharePoint integration piece, which is a little bit different from the ServiceNow spoke. For SharePoint, this is a true connection to SharePoint where we surface SharePoint data inside ServiceNow as a widget, and your security of who you are as a user transfers through as we connect to SharePoint. So very unique. And then the last one is DocGenerator, which at the end of a process, normally something's created. And we wanted to create, be able to pull from tables inside ServiceNow and create documents, whether that's filling out a form and the form knows who you are. So we can fill out, 20 fields of that form that you don't have to put your name, your email address, your phone number in every time you fill out a form. It auto-populates for that. So that's our third product. And those are the products we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about the 2, which is Tasker, which is our enterprise collaboration management or correspondence tracking or action tracking, however you want to call it inside an organization. And then we're going to show you our DocIntegrator functionality, which is our files, forms, and digital signature application. So over the last 6 years, we've created some services around ServiceNow as well as products. One of the services that we are experiencing a high uptick on is storing information and documentation and files inside ServiceNow becomes expensive. Paying for storage inside ServiceNow never goes down. So we've had some customers come to us and want us to migrate their data off of ServiceNow back into SharePoint to alleviate the cost of storing documents inside ServiceNow. So we've got a service called DocMigrator, where we will move information from ServiceNow back into SharePoint, which then enhances the encryption, and you get the wonderful benefits of all the co-editing and everything else that automatic version control and everything else that SharePoint has. We also created a functionality inside our DocIntegrator product called DocFlow, which is a document signing capability, which we might touch on today, but I'm not sure. And then, of course, we have our products that we specialize at Discover Technologies and DTech, which is ServiceNow and Microsoft applications. So what we're going to show you today is our correspondence tracking, action tracking, tasking system. We wanted it to be intuitive, an easy to use system. If you have ServiceNow, it shouldn't be a big footprint for you to look at the screen and the portal and go, yeah, that's what I work in every day. But we wanted to make sure that we had something easier than a smart sheet, a Monday, or a ClickUp. We wanted something that was very easy to build. You don't have to build workflows to start, and for the day that's installed, anyone can just hit a button that says create task and then task people. You don't have to build anything out. So it alleviates the IT footprint. We wanted to extend the capabilities of everything inside ServiceNow. So if you have SPM or CSM, and you have users that need to interoperate with some of those things, but you don't want the full extent of having to license a full fulfiller license of ServiceNow or a business license of ServiceNow, but you wanted them to be involved in a process. Our systems allow you to extend the applications inside ServiceNow and very cost effectively, inexpensively, deploy capability to users that you typically would not involve in a SPM, CSM, ITSM, ITM process, which is kind of unique. So we have the widget to be able to plug in. We'll show that to you today in the HR suite that we're about to show you. And then DocIntegrator, as we discussed, is our ability to connect and present files here on the right-hand side that are living in SharePoint, but they look like they're living in ServiceNow. So we wanted to get rid of the swivel, right? We want you to stay inside your ServiceNow applications and not have to leave them to go interoperate with files that don't live inside ServiceNow. We also don't want you to have to leave ServiceNow to search for files that might live inside SharePoint, Teams, or your inbox. So really, we're trying to dynamically create an environment where a fellow team member of your organization can go to one place and do their work and spend 90% of their time there and not have to break out of that system to complete a task. So with that, I'm going to fire through a few slides and just sort of talk about two scenarios that we have. Where an organization had created a homegrown system on SharePoint with a ton of workflow built into it. Every time they wanted to make a change, it cost them a lot of money with their systems integrator to make that change to the application. And they came to us and said, let's see this thing that you guys have built, where I can keep the files that I've already created inside SharePoint. Those files don't go away, but I can connect with new functionality that isn't SharePoint workflow. And that is our enterprise tasking tool that we'll show you today. So quick enterprise adoption. It was cost efficient as far as what the investment was made into recreating those workflows, as we call process templates. So we'll show those to you today, and be able to interoperate across multiple platforms. So it's pretty interesting case study. The other was a massive system, was a legacy tasking tool that was over 15 years old inside an organization, and it was really difficult to work in. And they were trying to modernize it, and they were looking at a massive price tag for a modernization project. So they went out to the market and luckily found us, and we engaged with them and deployed into their organization of just over 5,000 executives that have created over 300,000 or completed over 300,000 tasks in the last few years in our SaaS system. So with that, let's get into it. Let's see it. Let's have a look at it. And let David walk you through the functionality of what we're here for today. David, over to you.
All right. Thank you, John. In today's demonstration, we'll see how you can manage your daily work in the centralized ServiceNow experience, all the while leveraging the power of SharePoint. So ultimately, what does this do? It extends the reach and investment within the secure ServiceNow platform. So what we're looking at right now is a power user or task manager's experience. So what do we see? This is essentially our home base, what's open, what's overdue, right? What's due this week? So that quick snapshot into what's going on. We can, and what we'll talk about is ad hoc or dynamic tasking, as easy as email. What's on our plate, what's on the plate for our whole team, templates. So these are standardized or routine tasks that we don't want to have to recreate every time. And lastly, we are based on the ServiceNow platform, right? We're built on that platform. So we inherit all of the core capabilities, including dashboards and reporting that are all configurable, actionable, and drillable. So we'll come back to this home base a few times throughout the demonstration. Where we're going to begin is creating a new ad hoc or dynamic tasks. And these are as easy as email. So this is really what the subject line is, who's it going to, and the body. On the left side, these are different ways to go about tasking. So it can be very simple, just like an email. You come in, you write an email like experience, submit, or you can make it more complex. So it is very versatile in that regard. In terms of tasking, let's say we have a new hire policy that we want to kick off. In terms of the due date, this is not always clear in email, so this is a great substitute for that system. While this is not required, it's very important for reporting purposes, right, in terms of the category and what priority this specific task is. So now we get into the power of Tasker. This is who's it going to, so essentially the to line in an email, but we also have this idea of subtasking. You can think of it like CCing, and this could be either to individuals or to groups. So if you want it, send it to a group holistically or individuals, very easily you can select those people and proceed throughout your task management. The one thing to mention is this is dynamic in entirety, so we can add those individuals now, but we can also add it throughout, right? It is not rigid like workflow. We complement workflow within ServiceNow. So as we generate this task, we'll see it being constructed. There's a few ways to visualize what we're looking at, which is the task management system. So some individuals want to see that very clear-cut way, and we're transitioning now from the task manager or power user's perspective into an end user. So any employee, 98% of your users that are going to be operating within Tasker. They're going to receive an email. Yes, we're trying to get you out of email and spreadsheets and custom-built homegrown solutions. But just for notification purposes, you'll receive an email and be prompted via hyperlink directly into what we're looking at. On the left side, very clear and clean look of email, right? What do you have to do? Who's it going to? And then we'll talk about this more throughout. Also document management, where they can live in ServiceNow, but most commonly with our customers, they utilize SharePoint for content management purposes. So this was a very simple task, and we'll look at one that's a little bit more complex, but again, it can get as complex as you would like it to be. There are many ways, as I mentioned, to visualize this. So we looked at one of the views before. This is a very popular experience. On the left side, you'll see the task tree. So this is created by DTech apps, and the purpose is to make it visual. So you can see, right, every individual holistically, not just you, where they are in the process, right? You can see based on the coding on the side, so where it is in the process. And when we were talking about before, how you can easily add people on the fly, right, in that terms of dynamic tasking. Let's say we need CJ to collaborate on this project with us, as simple as selecting him, and now he is part of this process, and he will also have access to all of those shared documents that live in SharePoint. So very easily being able to add someone on the fly. There's a few things that organizations that we speak to struggle. One of them is someone's out of office, they have been assigned something, they haven't yet accepted or began the work. So let's try to identify where that logjam is proactively as opposed to reactively and having delays in our timeline. Another piece is it allows your individuals, your everyday employees, to manage their own work and really promotes responsibility in that aspect. The last thing to mention in this part is this is huge for executives. So we have the idea of a sleep or waiting state. So an executive would normally get a very long, thread of emails for all of this work that's transpiring, but they don't even have something to do. So once all of these steps are complete, now this executive will receive an email so they actually have something to do in the system. They're not part of these very long email threads, but everything is still tracked within the single source of truth within the system. And lastly, managers don't always know how much work actually goes into different assignments. So this provides that visibility. You can see, right, we only task maybe 1 or 2 people. It gets subtasked and broken out, so it helps you for resource allocation and just level of effort going forward. We went through the task tree and how we can visualize all the work that's going on. The next piece is when John was talking about other products we offer. This is called DocIntegrator, and it's important because you can embed it anywhere throughout the platform. We're going to put it into Tasker. And what is DocIntegrator? It's the connection between ServiceNow and SharePoint. So what that means is even though these documents look like they live in ServiceNow, they all reside in SharePoint. And this is, you inherit all those capabilities such as versioning, locking down PII, and being able to store all of your documents in a purpose-built content management solution. The 2 use cases that we commonly see are PDF signatures, so digital signatures within regulated commercial entities or the government, and the other one is collaborating on, let's say, a Word document. So again, these documents live and breathe in SharePoint, and with one click, we can open this down in our desktop app, which is Adobe. So we can open this in any digital signature solution of choice. In this case, free Adobe Reader is very common amongst organizations we work with. Either they have it today or they have Adobe Pro licenses or DocuSign that they're looking to sunset that they acquired, let's say, during COVID. We review all of the information and we can digitally sign this document very easily. If you do have a PIV or CAC for credential purposes, you could do so during this process. But again, the key is free Adobe Reader being able to very easily digitally sign that document. And if we open this document now in the browser, you see this lives in SharePoint, never left SharePoint, and this is the digital signature that we just applied. So this really just proves how you're always working on the most up-to-date version that is located in SharePoint, but you don't have to leave your experience to gain those advantages.
So David, we did have a question come in real quick while we're on the view. Just to go back, referenced the question was specifically didn't understand the executive part. Could you go back and explain the difference for a minute?
Sure. So there's different ways to set up tasks, and this is just one of those for higher level managers or executives. So this task is not active until all of these other tasks are complete. So once all of these are marked complete, then this task becomes active and your executive or manager is assigned something. So they're not receiving these long email threads when they don't even have something to do. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so just explaining that what we see here in this task tree is really from top to bottom that sequential order, and the final approver doesn't get stuck with a laundry list of information. They're just left with the approval part. I think that's what we were trying to communicate, and we'll just sort of reiterate it again. Perfect. Looks like we did explain that. Excellent. Okay. So thanks, Dave.
Perfect. Yep. So within that SharePoint connection on the right side, we just digitally signed a document. Another large use case that we hear from customers is co-editing or co-authoring within the Microsoft suite. So we're just opening within the browser a Word document, and we can see Chris is editing this as we speak. So we are leveraging all of those core capabilities, all of the goodness that Microsoft offers, such as commenting, right? And as we make these updates, Chris and I are always working on that most up-to-date version. And because we have version history via SharePoint, we can always revert back to a previous version if needed as well, right? You have all of that version history located within SharePoint, and we are just co-authoring or co-editing on different documents. Here, it's a Word doc, could be Excel, PowerPoint, or others. So that concludes this part of the demo in terms of the task tree. So again, many ways to visualize the task capabilities and how we relate to all the other people in this task tree. And then also on the right side, all of the document management. The next piece is going to be templates. So those are those repeatable or standardized tasks that we have as a company or team or individual. Just one thing to note is if you do, if you're running a task and you find out you're going to use this again, you can always quickly save this as a template, and we'll talk about templates in a moment. So we're switching gears back into the power user or the task manager for an organization. So as opposed to the end user, right, that 98% of the business users that we just saw within the task tree. So this is all about templates, repeatable tasks. There's a few ways to think about this. They could be personal tasks, such as training or performance reviews. Those for your team. These could be weekly activity reports, and you can set it and forget it, right? It's kicked off every week on Friday. And lastly, you also have the idea of global templates. So we're working with one customer that's evaluating their laptops. In order to do that, they need to perform a data call. As opposed to sending around an email and gathering all that information, you can easily trigger a data call, for all of the departments you need. All those individuals will add their information and it will roll back up and be captured within these tasks. So trying to make it as easy as possible so that you don't have to manually do this via email or spreadsheets. It is all done throughout the system. The most important part is you do not need to involve IT or developers for workflow. So you can think of this like task flow, and it goes really up into the boundary of workflow. So you do not need IT or developers to create this, complicated logic. With minimal training, your task managers can create these. You're not waiting for all of the, backlog to be completed, and IT is freed up in terms of their resources as well. The last thing to mention with templates is you can run them in a draft state. And what that means is on the fly, you can make some edits, right? We need to actually add this other group or remove one. You can do so without actually triggering and kicking off these tasks. Many customers use the idea of templates throughout their organization for, again, personal, training, performance reviews, weekly activity reports, or data calls across the enterprise. Coming back to the home base for that power user, we have dashboards. So again, we're on ServiceNow. We're leveraging all of the reporting capabilities. So from the task manager's perspective, what do we see? These are all, customizable and configurable, but we can see what's open, right? What's overdue. So where do we need to pay more attention to? Maybe we have to do some load balancing. And the key here is to try to be more proactive than reactive. So as opposed to seeing all these overdue tasks, how as a team can we try to prevent this and meet our deadlines on time? Because if one of us fails, we fail together. These are just a few different ways to visualize the data, and all of this information is being pulled from those individual tasks. And these are very much customizable to different individuals, different personas for their needs. So from the CIO's perspective, they may have 15 seconds. They want to get a quick pulse check into how are we doing as an organization, what has been open, what has been closed, what's overdue, as opposed to diving into all of the nitty-gritty detail of each task below. So it's really just that high-level health check, 10 seconds to see how are we doing as an organization, maybe making some budgeting or justification decisions for acquiring new staff members. It all starts with first gathering the data and identifying areas to target for improvement. Before we conclude this section, so what do we see? We experience how you can work within an easy to use, purpose-built enterprise work management system, Tasker, and this is designed for everyday tasks that you would normally do in email and spreadsheets. So for many of you that are on this call are probably familiar with a screen like this. We'll discover how you can collaborate and operate in the centralized ServiceNow experience without leaving this experience. So DocIntegrator, that SharePoint to ServiceNow connection, can be embedded in any ServiceNow app. We're going to do it in HRSD, could be CSM, SPM, or even a custom app, and in platform, portal, or workspace. So highly versatile in that regard. Essentially, this is a very standard record, in this case for a HR agent, and everything looks normal. The only difference is this one tab, and this is DocIntegrator. So it's the same UI for a fulfiller or a user on the back end of ServiceNow, but instead of having to navigate to SharePoint to find the documents, everything is centralized right in our experience in front of us. So this is very familiar, I'm sure, to most people because we just saw it about 5 minutes ago embedded inside of Tasker itself. So again, we can complete these rather quickly because we did so a few moments ago, but one click, being able to digitally sign our document in our signature solution of choice. In this case, it will be free Adobe Reader. If you do have a PIV or CAC, we do support those capabilities for credentialing. And as simple as that, right, this document is digitally signed and we can move on to whatever else we need to do, such as co-editing this document in Word. And as this opens, if this is opened by someone else, we will also see their initials in this view as well. So PDFs and Word, but it also supports Excel or any other documents that you would like to store inside of SharePoint. There's a few pieces to unpack here, but to comb through it quickly, if you do have a lot of documents, let's say 30 or 40, like one of our customers has, you can easily search the content. So not just the title, but what's inside of the document. So you can find what you need. These are all of the metadata that's coming from SharePoint, highly configurable. I think when I set mine up, there are 130 columns in SharePoint, 130 fields. Also, you can search in SharePoint for documents. You can also search within your own Microsoft Teams and your own Outlook. So it's heavily ingrained within the Microsoft suite, but we've been asked this, it is only querying against what you have access to. So if you can't see something in SharePoint, you can't see it here, and you're only looking against, based on your logged in user, you are only looking against your Microsoft Teams account and your Outlook account as well. In terms of documents, if you do have a document on your local computer, as opposed to going through SharePoint, finding the right folder and dropping that file in, you can easily do so via this one click. We pick our document and it's uploaded into SharePoint directly. So even though, again, it looks like it hits ServiceNow, all these documents completely reside in SharePoint. As we go into the last piece, this is Tasker. So Tasker can be just like DocIntegrator, embedded within any ServiceNow app. So once you have it licensed, you can embed it within any ServiceNow app of your choosing. And why would you use this as opposed to, let's say, sending an email? So you don't have to leave your solution. So let's say you're an HR agent. In this case, to send an email to legal, you don't actually have to leave the system. You can trigger a task to them. And the benefit is everything is captured against this record. So against this HR case, all that data, all that information is captured. If we dive into one of these Tasker tasks, you'll see this is Tasker, all the functionality that we had in Tasker, it's just a different look and feel. So in this case, we are an HR agent. We're very familiar with that ServiceNow experience. So we do offer that way to visualize Tasker, but you can also see it and interact with our, that blue and white experience. So it's completely up to the user if they are familiar with one way and want to stick with it, or use the more elegant Tasker user experience. So just to wrap up the Tasker side, we were collaborating and operating in the centralized ServiceNow experience with using Tasker and SharePoint within HR SD. So in the first part, right, we within Tasker, we experience how you can work with an easy to use enterprise work management system designed for everyday tasks, policy reviews, or such. And next, we embedded Tasker within the HRSD application, combining ServiceNow and SharePoint and Tasker, right, across your ServiceNow environment.
We are changing the paradigm on how forms are created. The scenario that we had was two customers came to us and said, listen, we've created a form on ServiceNow. It took us over 18 months, and it services around 1,800 people. And we're having to maintain that application as a separate application. So if we have 50 forms you want to create, we have 50 applications we have to create. And most of them are taking between 6 and 18 months to create them. And then we've got to maintain them. If the form changes, we have to go and rebuild the form inside the application. So whether that was in Microsoft or in ServiceNow, there were a few implications. So one was the time to build the form. The second was what happens if the form changes? What's the time it would take for that? And the third was we didn't even get it deployed because the training was going to be brutal for people to change the way they fill out a form. So we looked at that challenge and said, wait a second, ServiceNow is pretty powerful. How can we use our technology to consume the form the way it looks and change the way an application looks? So what we created is this is the UI that David's about to show you. The UI is actually the physical form. On the left side of the UI are all the forms that you have to fill out. So whether you need to fill out a certification process that was launched automatically because you're about to come up against your 1-year certification and you have to take the course again. So you have to send a request to your supervisor to take the next course and have that done. So you have to fill that form out. Whatever it is, whatever you have to do as a user, or most importantly, as a supervisor, manager, and director level executive, you're constantly getting emails asking you to sign stuff. And it's tough to manage. And I hate hearing, I put something inside SharePoint for you, I'm waiting for it. I want to go to one place and find all the things that we're done. So with that requirement, we've created what we call DocFlow, which is a piece of functionality inside DocIntegrator, but we think it's so important that we actually give it a name. So key things are you can actually store all your forms inside ServiceNow and you can trigger them. They also can be sent around by email where you open up a ServiceNow application or ServiceNow form. It can be fired by an agent or it can be automated like we discussed. So you can create hundreds of forms very quickly. I think on average, David has been creating forms in 2 to 3 week windows and then launching them inside our demo environment. So that's what we're going to show you right now. David, feel free to fire it up.
Thank you, John. So in the last 15 minutes or so, we can cover DocFlow, but just think of this as DocIntegrator enhanced, because once you are licensed for DocIntegrator, that SharePoint to ServiceNow connection, you also get the functionality of DocFlow. So as John mentioned, today's demo, or this last piece, will be about how employees can automatically populate standard forms and route for approval and signature. But most importantly, it is that second part, right? Forms automation. Many organizations that we speak to have manual business processes. They're sending around via email, sending around links, or even paper-based, or they have expensive custom-built solutions with one form. We can empower customers to replace these for any and all forms. And ultimately, we are using the pre-existing form. We are not recreating it. So we're going to start from the portal. This can work from the standard ServiceNow SP service portal. We're just going to take it from the perspective of the Employee Center Pro, but it can function from any portal. And this is just one way to kick off that process. It could also be from the back end, a UI action, right? A button, change of state for a record. It could even be an email, right? An inbound email. So we can utilize all of the workflow that ServiceNow offers. So people come into the portal to be able to do something quickly and get out, whether that's make a request, fill out a form, or check knowledge articles. So what we're going to see is all of the different forms this individual has access to. So as John was just mentioning before, I automate probably about one form a week part-time. These are all the forms that have been automated with DocFlow, and some customers, right, spend a year to automate just one. We're going to focus on certification of training. So for those familiar, this is the SF 182, but it could be any standard form, whether it's a DD, a GSA, an SF, or some customers use it for internal forms that happen to be standard to their organization. So an individual comes into the system, picks, right, who's this for and what form. So the two things that are important, this person already has a user profile in ServiceNow. For those more technical, it could come from any table such as the sys user table. So piece one is we don't have to manually type in our information. It already exists, decreasing the risk for data entry errors and saving time, taking that and putting it into the form. And lastly, this is the form that we're going to route, and it could be to individuals or groups, really however you set up that process. So once we fire this off, we're going to hop into the single pane of glass that is DocFlow. So an approver, whether you're an employee, you're a manager, or you're an executive, you want everything to be centralized, making your life easier. For those approvers that do live and breathe in ServiceNow, they can access the application, the modules, just like any other in ServiceNow. But a lot of these approvers are not living in ServiceNow, and they're going to receive an email with a hyperlink taking them into this experience we're looking at. But the important part is this could be done for any and all forms, no matter, right, who is it for, when the due date is, or which specific form it is. You also see the route status. So this is not always clear in email where it's going to, and also the due date. Lastly, you can also communicate via Teams. So we are heavily entrenched within the Microsoft suite. And lastly, we hear from customers that, great, we have a 3-page form and we have 2 pages of instructions. How can we easily tailor the instructions for each route? So each person or group, how can we provide very easy instructions so they don't have to comb through that long document? And lastly, we see the document right in front of us. So as John mentioned, we took the form and made it the UI. So this is that pre-existing form. When we go into it, we'll see all of this data was taken from a table within ServiceNow, and then we'll digitally sign that document. The reason why we call this DocIntegrator Enhanced is because this document lives in SharePoint. even though it looks like it appears in ServiceNow. So it leverages all of those capabilities of DocIntegrator. So just like before, once we open this document, we'll see all of the information that was auto-populated from data that lives in ServiceNow, right? So pulled from the individual's user profile. And most importantly, with DocFlow forms automation, it's all about sending it to the people, the individuals or groups to perform those digital signatures. So in this case, we are the supervisor of Able. We come in, we review all of the information that is presented, and we digitally sign this file. Again, we're always working on the same version because this is located in SharePoint. So when we close this out and we submit this to the next person or group within this chain, they'll be using that most up-to-date version, so we don't have to worry about version history. We also don't have to have people navigating through SharePoint to find the right document. We had an executive a couple months ago that said it takes 15 minutes to find a document in SharePoint, so they actually reverted to having an assistant print out that form. They would manually sign it with a pen, wet signature, and they would then scan it back into the system. The whole process is very cumbersome, and even worse, the version history becomes a nightmare. So now that we submitted that one form, again, this is our to-do list, so we don't have to bounce around between email and this experience that we're looking in front of us. We can then go down the list to all of the other forms, review them, and pass them on their way. So we just saw in this last section, in one enhanced and centralized experience, approvers can sign all of the standard forms without having to bounce around between SharePoint, email, and ServiceNow. It keeps them all in that one system. And this, again, was for one document, for one form. We can help you automate any and all standardized forms you have. So with that, we can open it up to questions now that we covered DocIntegrator, Tasker, and DocFlow.
Thank you, David. So go ahead, if you have questions, let's feel free to put them in the Q&A pane or the chat window.
The question, David, is can we connect to more than one SharePoint tenant?
Rob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, you can connect to more than one SharePoint tenant. It's really how you want to configure those connections. Happy to go into more detail if you want to schedule a one-off of how we actually connect SharePoint to ServiceNow. And out of curiosity, is it SharePoint Online? Okay, perfect. We do support all the way back to SharePoint on-prem 2013, but most of our customers, just like you, do work on SharePoint Online 365.
We let you connect to any tenants. You can create multiple connections, and then you can even, against the same application, use two different connections. So it's completely configurable per application. So yeah, 100% can do multiple tenants.
Did we show federated search, David?
We did not.
One of their valuable pieces, if you want to take the screen back over, again, trying to make sure we don't swivel chair you, being able to stay inside ServiceNow and search across multiple SharePoint libraries, as well as, the question always happens that I know I sent David Sandberg this information. I don't know if I sent it to him by email. I may have sent it to him in a Teams chat, or I may have just shared a file with him inside SharePoint, but I know it's there. So what do? We have to go into all three of those applications and search them to see if we did send that to David. So what we wanted to do is one of the requirements from one of our customers is say, hey, either from the employee portal or from whatever application that you're currently inside ServiceNow, you can search everything and get the response back, and then start to filter that search to see if you can find that information that you're looking for a lot faster. So with that, go ahead, David.
All right. Yep. And I was exactly going to call out the same thing of we are going to, just like before, work from the Employee Center Pro portal. This can function in any portal, or if you do have a ServiceNow app like HRSD, you can also utilize this federated search capability. It's as simple as, right, you're inundated with documents. I mean, I started here about 10 months ago and I've probably come across thousands. So where did you send it? Where is it located? The answer is it doesn't matter because you can search it all in one go. So just by simply typing in policy, I'm looking for policy documents, you can see all of the different sources. So SharePoint, Teams, and Outlook, just like before, you're only querying against what SharePoint documents you have visibility into. So you're not breaking that system, and also your own Outlook and your own Teams. And we even take it a step further by searching against the knowledge bases. So if you have documents, if you have knowledge articles, you can also query against those, and we can see that, right, that long list of documents and even filter accordingly. So trying to make it as easy as possible for, in this case, end users, but any user within ServiceNow to be able to find what they need with one search.
That's awesome, David. Thank you for showing that. I should have caught that while we were doing the demonstration.
Here we go. So next question, actually, really quickly, we showed in the demo clicking Teams, David, and the question was when you click the Teams icon, what's going to happen? If you want to just quickly explain,
sure,
explain that experience. But it launches Teams, but I'll let you go into more detail.
Yep, perfect. Yeah, I didn't show it just because we were, pressed for time, but yes, once you click that little Teams icon, so let's say you put it next to David in the single pane of glass, it will open up a Teams chat and it will have that hyperlink. So when you send it to them, they can click on it and it will take them directly to the assignment that you were talking about, to that document. So we connect, commonly via email, but also we expand that within Microsoft to Teams. It's just another way to communicate and send the link and any information you would like.
Yeah, we're doing it through a deep link, and if you're using Microsoft Edge as your default browser, it will actually bring up the Teams chat. When you click on the link from Teams, it will take you into the task and bring up the Teams chat in Edge on the right-hand side through one of their extensions.